G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video, and here we go. We've jumped into Daily Race C again. I was actually having a load of fun on this combination, and if you watched my last video you will now know that I have a brand new account for Daily Races, R4M_Smok. So we've jumped in. We are of course EB rated, so we are in the back of sort of the lower level lobbies, and we get to see a lot of funny moments in these kind of lobbies, let's put it that way. But this was the sort of last race that I did of the day when I got my brand new account. So this is basically the one where I want to go last to first. That's the goal, last to first. And you might look at this kind of situation and go, how the hell are you going to win coming from the back of the grid? And the answer is because I'm a lot faster than I'm a lot faster than the other people in this lobby. But let's see if we can carve through this grid as quickly as possible without crashing and without sort of spinning or binning another car. But as we're heading through this opening sector, yellow flag is out. So we are in 13th, which is still quite high of a position. I could have easily started 20th if there was enough people in this lobby. But somebody had binned it just before Turret Rouge. We've made a position up already, scattering of cars on the exit of Turret Rouge. So we're going to be looking to get past 1-2 positions here. And we managed to get that completely done around the outside of the little kink heading onto the big straight. We've got the slipstream off the back of Mori BK, and we're going to be bump drafting him along to try and ward off this other car that's on my right hand side that has not got the slipstream, unfortunately. So we're going to be bumping Mori all the way up until the first chicane. He brakes earlier than I anticipate, and I run into the back of him and smash him across the inside of the chicane there. I'm trying to redress this by letting him go ahead, and there he is. I've let him ahead, so we're just going to continue on racing. It would probably be a little bit unfair of me to now overtake him into the second chicane because he's been compromised on this straight, so we're going to be trying to just about move over and give him a little bit of a bump. We've successfully done that, and we've now got a lot of slipstream looking to the inside. I think probably not quite on, but we're going to be trying to well, I think we were trying to run side by side through there, but it's not quite come off, and he's tried to go for the dive bomb, obviously trying to think that I was ramming him at the first chicane, and you know, I think that is that. He's not taken my redress as what it was. You've thought, oh, you're trying to ram me, aren't you? I'm going to have a go too, but he failed miserably, if I do say so myself as a R4M member. We've now got another car going down the inside at Mulsanne Corner. We're going to try and get this outside move done at Mulsanne Corner. We managed to get it done in the last video, but Waterblue, obviously a little bit more practice in the braking zone for Mulsanne Corner, and manages to actually successfully gain that position off me at the bottom. It's actually a lot easier to get these moves done at the end of the straights because the slipstream effects in these cards are actually quite pronounced, because there's a lot of sort of aero surfaces, so the difference when you get into slipstream compared to no slipstream is quite high, so you do accelerate a lot quicker. But coming into the Arnage Indianapolis section, we've got this slipstream off Feek. We're going to be looking at the inside of Arnage, and we've just about got the move done, but there was a little bit of contact at the apex, and he's just shuffled wide. He left the door open, however, which is why I went for that one, so I think that move is fair play to me. So coming up towards the Porsche curves, we've now got the slipstream off the back of the car ahead thanks to a bump from the car behind, but unfortunately following a car through the Porsche curves means only one thing. It means filthy air, and especially when the car ahead brakes unexpectedly. You don't brake for the Porsche curves in these cars, so I was not expecting that. So now we're losing so much time looking around the outside of turn 31. It's almost impossible to do, but then there's a little bit of an awkward moment, a little bit of a lag between three of us there, and I run a touch too wide on the exit of turn 32 and get myself a half-second track limit penalty. The car next to me serves a penalty at the third of the 3 penalty serving zones at this track, and we've unfortunately got to serve this at the worst of the 3 penalty zones on the track. If we have a look behind, we've got a 1.9 second gap at this stage. Yellow flag out at Turret Rouge of the following lap. We managed to get through that move there, and we run a little bit wide, obviously underestimating the dirty air coming off the back of Nero R8 clubbing, and that penalty that I have to serve coming out of the chicane coming up has now increased. It's now elevated to 1 second, which is not good. The time loss you get from serving a 1 second penalty is actually a lot bigger than you do from serving 2 half-second penalties, because the speed difference you get from an extra half-second of braking is really massive. Going to be braking as late as we possibly can into Larches chicane. We actually managed to successfully fend off Nero R8 Clubby, who I think has actually made a little bit of a mistake coming into there, because he's now dropped down to 2 positions behind me. Skip ahead to the end of the lap, we didn't really lose any positions from serving our penalty, and then by the end of the lap we've caught up to Bin Luo, and we're just having to trundle slowly through the chicane behind him, who is going to serve his half-second penalty on the penalty gates, coming out of the first chicane on the straight. But as for the now, we're looking up the inside of turn 1, very easy to do, easy to run side by side through here in these cars, and then coming into the Dunlop chicane, I receive a little bit of a punt from behind, so I have to take to the extra tarmac runoff there over the dirty part of the track on the outside of the Dunlop chicane, but we managed to just about defend that position successfully from Bin Luo. So let's see if we can get a nice smooth run out onto the straight through Turret Rouge. Let's see what we can do as we turn into Turret Rouge. The car behind is going to suffer with masses of dirty air, and that gap is going to open up to over the slipstream range. Coming into the second chicane of lap 3, we're now up into 4th position. We're going to be looking at Super Driver X, who makes a mistake getting caught on the curb there, and we just about go around him. Oh my goodness, he did not ghost there. That was so close to a massive contact moment. And as we skip ahead here, somebody's bended here. Have a look at this move here. We're going to go up the inside, full confidence at Turret Rouge. Up the inside of Turret Rouge, and we just about keep 2 wheels on the curb to get through there penalty free. And I can tell you, when I woke up on the morning, I did not expect to be going for a move at Turret Rouge later that day, and in fact I don't think anybody woke up and thought, yeah, I'm going to go for a move at Turret Rouge. But look who did a move at Turret Rouge. Myself, we've done it, up the inside cleanly at Turret Rouge, and then once again the car ahead of me, when we caught up to him, has made a mistake on the exit of Arnage, and we managed to get that move done before the Porsche curves, and now he's got all of my dirty air, so he's not going to be able to navigate this very quickly at all, and that gap is going to open up to over the slipstream range. So we've broken the slipstream already to the leader as we chuck it in here, gets through there nicely, well within track limits, and the penalty, the slipstream range is broken, so we were able to just about hold onto this first position by the end of the race. That is a last to first challenge, ladies and gentlemen, from the back of the grid. How good is that? And that was my first victory as well, up 12 positions with the fastest lap. How good is that? But this combination really spoke to me. We all know Circuit de la Sarthe is my favourite track, so what I actually did next was a little bit risky, but probably not as risky as I probably thought. I jumped onto it in my main account, my 55,000+ DR rated R4M Smokescreen account. I jumped in and set a qualifying time. I did do that, a 3:15.7. I could probably get a 3:14 without too much more practice. So it's not the best qualifying lap I've ever done, but it's certainly not bad at all. And it's actually put me second in this lobby. Now, what's interesting here, the car ahead, Denny Racing 3967. He's the fastest car in Asia Oceania time trial for this combination. He's the #1 top 10 time for this. He's got the fastest qualifying time. There's nobody in the region quicker than him, and we've basically got a head-to-head battle. Now, I'll be completely honest, I was going into this thinking, I'll probably be able to stick with him. The answer to that is no, and we'll see how we manage to sort of go with that. But I felt as though when I was racing without Danny, I was gapping the field by like 10-15 seconds by the end of the race, and I thought, I've got to be one of the fastest people that's doing the race this week. But then, Danny Racing jumped on with me, and he completely showed me up. I'll be dead honest there. Our fast race time was probably a 16 minutes and 40 seconds. Danny Racing was almost breaking the 16 minutes and 30 seconds barrier. He almost got a 16 minutes 29 on one of his races. So, all in all, long story short, he's bloody quick. And all we've got to try and do is keep with him for as long as possible. I think if we can just at least keep with him, my goodness, that will be an absolute achievement. Now, the good thing about these cars is the slipstream range is quite strong from basically the moment you get into the slipstream, so all we've got to do is get to 7.5 tenths behind him, or we'll probably be able to gain all the way up to the back of him by the end of one of these long straights. So all we've got to do is try and get a good exit out of some of these corners, and that is going to be very good news in terms of this race. But all through this first lap, we've just about been hanging about 8.5 tenths behind him, so painfully 1.5 tenths out of the slipstream range. Seems to always happen to me. I'm always stuck just out of slipstream range in in these races here, but on the exit of Arnage, we actually get a decent exit, but still not quite enough. We're less than a tenth away from being in the slipstream of Danny Racing. However, I guess at this particular section of the track, the Porsche curves, you probably don't want to be in slipstream anyway, and we don't quite get the entry right, having to lift slightly, but we're still carrying 7th gear, and then we have a slight lift, still carrying 7th gear now. We've got the confidence to keep the speed up, chuck it in flat out to the final left-hander, and we've actually gained on Danny Racing on the exit there, coming up towards the Ford chicanes. It's going to be almost in slipstream range, coming into here, and it's not quite. We're about 300ths of a second from getting into the slipstream range of Danny Racing, so still not quite able to get close enough. On the exit of the chicanes, however, we do get a slightly superior exit, but once again, still not close enough, less than a tenth out of the slipstream. But unfortunately for me, we're coming up into Sector 1, which Danny Racing happens to be absolutely mega at. So let's have a look. Heading through here, he's got himself a penalty, so I had a look at that, but then I had a look up at me. I got a penalty too. Oh my goodness, that is not good news. We're going to fast forward all the way through here. That gap has opened up to 1.2, 1.3 seconds almost by the exit of Tert Rouge, so you can see he's very good out of the last sort of acceleration zone before the Tert Rouge, before the straight. And that gap has opened up big time. We both served our penalties because we had the same penalty. We didn't really lose much time to him at all. We both lose time in tandem. Coming out of Mulsanne corner, that gap still remaining about 1.3 seconds behind Danny Racing. And coming into here, the gap opens up to about 1.5. So I think what was happening is I was braking too early for Indianapolis. And then compounding that, I think I was running a little bit too deep into Arnage. So I was struggling through Indianapolis-Arnage section of this track. So you can see by the exit there, we got a slightly better exit than him. But the gap has opened up to 1.5 seconds. They're coming into the Porsche curves. Let's see if we can get this good. We get a lovely run through the first half. We've still been flat all the way, flat through this left-hander, and then we've got a slight lift coming through the right-hand portion. Chuck it into the left. Is there any lifting there? Yep, a little bit of a lift there, and we run a little bit wide on the exit. There's a penalty. Oh my goodness, I think that's race over because that gap has opened up to 1.7 seconds, and I'm going to have to serve that penalty, and that just put me off the back. I sort of lost my speed a little bit because I knew I wasn't going to be able to catch him, and we managed to finish the race 7.4 seconds behind him. I mean, it's still not a bad race time by me. It's still not bad at all, setting a 16:42, so 7 seconds slower than Danny Racing, but we still come across the line in second with a clean race. So I guess not too bad, and I shouldn't be too disheartened because Danny Racing is one of the fastest people in the entire region, so I do definitely have to keep things in perspective. I'm doing very well in terms of how fast I am compared to this guy ahead of me. But it was all building up to this race. I actually did a few races with him. I did not record the first race I did, but I got stuck in dirty air. Another car overtook me and got in between us, so I was not able to really contend with him at all. So really not too disappointed that I didn't record that. But these last two races, the one I just showed you and this one, my goodness, that this one in particular was really, you know, it really showed me that if I play all my cards right, I think I can just about get onto the pace of people like this. But coming through the first sector, what made this particular dynamic really difficult is that Danny Racing would be ahead of me, so I would have the dirty air plus the cold tyres through the first sector, and I was not able to keep close enough to be able to get through Tert Rouge and remain in the slipstream. So that put me on the back foot quite early on in the race, and I got another car attempting to overtake me coming into the first of the two chicanes on the straight here, and I have to run very deep, braking as late as possible coming into there, and I do get myself a penalty. Oh my goodness, that is really detrimental in terms of this race, but I guess at least you can look behind and go, well, I did break the slipstream at least, so that's good news. If I can at least just open this gap up enough, by the time we have to serve this penalty, I might be okay to keep this second position. But as we saw in the first race, Danny Racing is not immune to penalties himself, especially through the Dunlop chicane at the opening of the lap. So we are going to have to keep our fingers crossed for that. We get a very good second chicane and actually get a very superior exit compared to Danny Racing, and we have got ourselves the slipstream off the back of him. So we're going to be gaining up into Mulsanne corner, and as long as we can get those braking zone and acceleration traction zone good and remain in the slipstream, which I think we successfully do on the exit there, we actually get a slightly better exit than him. we've got the slipstream. We're going to be serving this penalty on the next penalty gates, which is on the exit of Arnage. Not the worst penalty zone, but not the best either. The best would be the ones before the forward chicanes. But thanks to the slipstream, we've got this move done. So all we need to do now is get a very good Indianapolis Arnage, and we're going to be gaining a lot of time on Danny Racing, as much as we possibly can, as long as we get a good exit here. A little bit of oversteer, but that gap has opened up to about half a second. Not bad at all. So as long as we can get through this corner okay, we run a little bit deep, and therefore don't get the best of exits. We serve this penalty, and let's see if we can just about remain in the slipstream of Danny Racing. Obviously, coming out of that slow corner, the penalty serving zone of a half second is not as bad as the other penalty gate on this track. So we managed to just about keep into a slipstream, but unfortunately we're coming up to the Porsche curves, and that means dirty air. But let's see if we can keep as close as possible. Managed to keep it flat out all the way through all of these corners here. We've got to lift through this right hand portion, and we have to downshift because we run a little bit wide. And then coming through this left hander, he's opened that gap up. That gap has opened up beyond the slipstream range. But this is not race over, because we're going to be keeping on board for the first sort of 3 laps of this race as we're trying to cut these chicanes as much as possible. And this race here and this particular lap coming up was really pretty much on my limit. So normally you step into a race scenario and you don't drive 100% because of, you know, the fear of crashing. If you step, as soon as you drive at 100.001%, you've stepped over the limit and you're going to crash. Especially in this car, there's no real... It's a really unforgiving car. Like, you lose traction, you're losing time, basically. It's very difficult to correct. As we discussed before, Danny Racing is not immune to penalties himself, and he's got himself one on the exit of the Dunlop chicane, or coming through the Dunlop chicane in the first lap. That gap has opened up to 1.6, but as long as we can get a very good first chicane, we might be able to just about get close enough to get within his slipstream range as he serves that penalty. It will be interesting to see. But like we've said previous, I think it's only a half-second penalty. They're not that bad at this track. So it still will be a little bit touch and go as to whether we can actually get that slipstream. But let's head into the first chicane. Let's see if we can get a good exit out of here. Try and get the power down okay. We get a little bit of a snap on the curb. Not great in terms of trying to gain onto him, but he serves his penalty there. The gap is closing down, 1.2 seconds, 1.1 seconds. It will be very, very close to see if we can actually get within the slipstream. I don't think it's quite going to happen, as the end of the straight is coming up thick and fast, but he's lost about a second from serving a half-second penalty, or breaking for half a second to serve the penalty. But let's see if we can get a very good second chicane. We managed to just about touch that curb on the inside and avoid the outside curb on the power on the exit. The gap still remains at 8.5 tenths essentially. So this is what we saw in the last race. How painful is it to be just hanging just about a tenth out of slipstream range? This always happens to me. It's so frustrating. And this track is actually very good for the slipstream, except, you know, with exception of the first sector and the Porsche curves, you can follow another car very nicely. But we get a very nice exit out of Mulsanne corner, and that just puts us in the slipstream range of Danny Racing. The race itself is not over yet. I guess the racing is not over yet. We've still got, you know, 3 and a bit laps to go. We've got the slipstream off the back of Danny Racing, so what I'm looking for now is to try and get as close as possible through Indianapolis Arnage and try and slipstream past him, heading up into the Porsche curves. That will be a very crucial point, because if I can get Danny Racing stuck in my slipstream heading through the Porsche curves, that will prove very good for my race. We managed to get the car pulled up nicely for Arnage, but he's got a much superior exit to me in 6 tenths. It's going to be a very tall order to try and gain back up this straight. This straight is not as long as the other ones on this track, so we are going to be gaining. We've gained 2 tenths at this point, but the Porsche curves entry has come up already, and we're not quite able to get that done, having to lift off the throttle to try and not understeer off the track thanks to the dirty air. We've still got the slipstream, and the car is just about gripped up enough to keep it flat all the way up until this right-hand corner, and then this left-hand corner. We managed to actually chuck the car in very nicely into that left-hander, and we've just about remained we're like 0.02 of a second out of slipstream range at the moment. Not bad, because we can get a nice good downforce gripped up rendition of the forward chicanes as we're heading out onto the main straight. A little bit late on the throttle, just understeering slightly, hitting the curb too hard. But look at that lap time, 3:18.2. That's a very quick lap time for me, at least. Danny Racing can go a lot faster than that, but in terms for my pace where I'm sitting, a 3:18.2 race time is actually not bad at all. Heading up through the Dunlop chicane, we get a load of oversteer on the exit there, and thankfully my race is just about saved by Denning Racing, getting a 1 second penalty this time. We're going to see on this edition of the penalty serving zone on the exit of Larcher chicane just how much time you do lose from a 1 second penalty, because if you think about it, you're now braking for 1 second, so you're losing a lot more speed than you are if you're braking for half a second. And because the travelling speed of the cars are so high, any car that doesn't serve a penalty all of a sudden has a massive difference to you. This car's brakes is also face ripping in terms of how quickly you can slow down. You can brake so late. Coming up towards the chicane at 320 kilometers an hour, you can brake at 100 meters and get the car pulled up in time. But on the exit of that chicane, he serves half a second. That gap is 2 seconds as he's coming up to serve the penalty, and then that gap is already closed down to under half a second, so we're well within slipstream at the moment. Going to be looking to get this move done, heading up into the second chicane down the straight, so we're still in contention for this victory. Despite mistakes by me, mistakes by Danny has just about kept me in the running to try and overtake him at the crucial portion of this race. Oversteer on the exit of the second chicane, and we've just about lost control of the car, but we've managed to keep up enough speed so Danny Racing can just get past me, but we're still going to have the very good slipstream, and you can see here, he's side by side, and I just lift off the throttle momentarily to just slip in behind him and give him a bump, because my plan here is to once again overtake into the Porsche curves. That's where I'm looking to set him up. So we're going to get an exit out of Mulsanne corner, and I don't even remember what I do. Do I bump drafting or do I overtake him? Because 3/10 behind him is going to be close enough, as this straight is one of the longest on the track. We're going to be coming up to the back of Danny Racing. I think we bump draft him. That's interesting. So definitely at this point, I've got in my mind I'm going to overtake him into the Porsche curves, because if I can keep him in my dirty air through the Porsche curves, I might be able to extend a little bit of a gap to him, as long as we don't make another mistake. But it relies on me getting a very good exit out of Arnage, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to brake early, get it pulled up, drive it around the apex, and try and get on the power as smoothly as possible. Danny Racing gets a load of oversteer, so that definitely helps my case, and now look at this gap, it's less than 2/10. We're going to have very strong slipstream, and then he pulls to the inside for the sort of left-hand kinks along the straight, but crucially the outside for Porsche curves. We had the slight overspeed from the slipstream. We managed to slip it up the inside, almost flat, but we are slightly narrow, so a little bit of a lift. But Danny Racing is going to have my dirty air. So coming through this right-hander, we managed to actually get it in nicely this time, and as long as we can chuck it into the left, okay. A little bit of a lift on the exit as the tyre wear comes in, but that gap has opened up to over the slipstream range, so we are in first position with more than the slipstream range as a buffer between myself and Danny Racing. So all I have to do now is get a very good 4 chicanes, get a very good first sector, and try and keep the gap open as we're heading onto the straight. But I catch the curb with my rear right tyre heading out onto the main straight this time, so it's not quite enough for Danny Racing to get back into my slipstream, but any little bit of a time gained by Danny is at a loss to me, because coming up into the Dunlop chicane, he's obviously so much quicker than me, as that gap closes down to about half a second from 8/10 behind me, so he's a lot quicker through that Dunlop chicane. You can cut it, but there is a risk of getting a penalty, and that's probably what Danny Racing was doing. But then coming up into Turt Rouge, trying to turn in, I just catch the grass on the entry, and that's just hindered my run through the Turt Rouge there. And Danny Racing now has my slipstream. However, it is once again not race over, because if we can stick into the slipstream of Danny Racing and just overtake him at the right time, we can still win this race. So it's obviously not ideal that I've fallen down behind him, but I'm going to be bump drafting him, because I know once again I want to be overtaking him into the Porsche curves, because I know that if I can be ahead coming into the Porsche curves, I can keep the position heading up to the line. But I've caught the curb on the exit of that first chicane there, and that cap has opened up to 1.1 seconds. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. I was right on my limit of driving this car, and I think at this point now, with the tyre wear coming off, the tyre wear coming on, and the fuel coming off, the car lightening up, I've not quite got the grip that I'm used to for the first half of this race, and we're going to see coming out of here, oversteer on the exit, and then we have a snap to the left and ride that curb, and that gap has opened up to 1.92 seconds, and that was enough for Danny Racing to just lose me. I was not able to catch that back up, and in fact he gapped me a little bit more. We come across the line 5.6 seconds behind them, so that is a 16:41, actually 1 second faster than my last race. But my goodness, what a race that was. What a race that was. I've managed to just about keep with one of the fastest players in the region at the moment, and that is quite the achievement for me. Not quite being able to beat him, but the fact that I was able to stick with him for the most of that race, up until, you know, the straight of lap 4 from lap 1, so over 3 laps. I was quite satisfied with that performance there, and beaming from ear to ear, because that was a fantastic race. And I hope to meet him on track again, but it really just goes to show that if I get my practice down pat, if I don't overstep the mark, if everything clicks in place for me, I can race very, very quickly, and that is a very promising sign for the future. But that's going to finish up this video today, so do hit the like button if you enjoyed, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. Do leave a comment as well. Questions, comments, and constructive criticism, as always, very much appreciated. But that's going to be the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.